Have you ever just looked around and thought, wow, look at all this life? I mean, from the tiniest bug to a blue whale, where in the world did it all come from? It's a huge question, right? Well, let's get into it, because the journey to the answer we have today, it completely changed everything we thought we knew.
Yeah, that's the big one. And for a really, really long time, humanity thought we had it all figured out. There was one very clear answer that came from tradition, from ancient texts, but things started popping up that didn't quite fit. Evidence, not from some new philosophy, but literally from the ground beneath our feet, started to challenge that old story.
So before this big shakeup, before Darwin, the story was totally different. The main idea, the one that pretty much everyone accepted, was what's known as the theory of special creation. And this wasn't just a religious idea. It was deeply woven into science, into culture. It was just how things were. Okay, so this theory basically had three main pillars. First, the idea was that every living thing, every plant, every animal, was created exactly as you see it today. Poof, there it is in its final form. Second, this diversity was set in stone. It never changed. No new species could appear, and none could ever disappear. And third, the Earth itself was thought to be super young, maybe only about 4,000 years old. That was the framework, the lens that everyone, even the top scientists of the day, used to see the world.
But then, people started exploring, and as they traveled the globe, they started finding things that just didn't make sense in that old model. They were digging up these strange bones, fossils, and discovering creatures in faraway lands that nobody had ever seen before. All of this was screaming that the world wasn't static. It wasn't unchanging at all.
And the real tipping point, the catalyst for this huge change, was this incredible 5-year journey at sea. A young guy, a naturalist named Charles Darwin, got on this ship, the HMS Beagle, and he just observed. He took notes on everything. And the more he saw, the more he realized that the world just didn't fit into that neat little box of special creation. It was way more complex, and it had to be way, way older than anyone had ever thought. And here's the thing. Darwin wasn't just collecting fossils like stamps. He was seeing patterns, connections. He noticed that the living animals in a place looked a lot like the fossilized animals from that same place. It was like they were related, echoes from the past. And the big one? He realized that tons of these ancient creatures were just gone. Forever. Extinct. That idea of extinction was a direct shot at the belief that life was fixed. I mean, how could it be fixed if things were disappearing?
So you can see the two ideas clashing, right? On one hand, you've got this tidy, young, unchanging world. On the other, you have all these observations pointing to a really old, dynamic planet where life changes. It evolves. But just saying it changes isn't good enough for science. The million-dollar question was, how? What was the mechanism?
And that is where Darwin's real genius kicked in. It's one thing to say life evolves, but it's a whole other thing to explain how it happens. He proposed a mechanism, a natural process that could do the job all on its own, with no outside intervention needed. And he gave it a name, natural selection.
The logic behind it is actually beautifully simple. It kind of breaks down into 4 steps. So first, just look at any group of animals or plants. They're not all identical clones, right? There's variation. Step 2, some of those little differences, those variations, just happen to give an individual a slight advantage in surviving where it lives. 3, the ones with that advantage, the fitter ones, are more likely to live long enough to have kids and probably have more kids. And then, finally, step 4, over a long, long time, over many generations, nature itself kind of selects for those successful traits. The population as a whole starts to look more and more like the successful individuals.
This whole process is where we get that super famous phrase, survival of the fittest. But honestly, it's probably one of the most misunderstood phrases in all of science. It doesn't just mean the strongest lion or the fastest Cheeto wins. No, in evolutionary terms, fitness means something much more specific. What it all boils down to is reproductive fitness. That's the key. It's simply an organism's ability to survive in its environment and pass its genes on to the next generation. That's it. So, in the grand game of evolution, being the fittest isn't about being the toughest. It's about leaving behind the most offspring who can also survive and reproduce. That's the only scoreboard that matters.
And get this, Darwin wasn't the only one who figured this out. It's pretty amazing, actually. Halfway across the world, another naturalist, a guy named Alfred Wallace, was out in nature and came up with the exact same idea, completely on his own.
That's when you know you're onto something big, right? When two people independently follow the evidence and arrive at the same incredible conclusion.
So, what are the big takeaways here? What did this all mean? Well, Darwin's theory wasn't just some boring textbook idea. It was a brand new history of life itself, a new origin story for us and for everything else on the planet. It just completely flipped our understanding of the world and our place in it.
For starters, the clock had to be reset, big time. This slow, patient process of natural selection, there's just no way it could happen in a few thousand years. It wouldn't even get started. So Darwin's theory demanded an incredibly ancient Earth. And wouldn't you know it, geologists were starting to prove exactly that our planet wasn't just thousands of years old, but billions of years old.
And that brought a really profound idea into focus. The history of life and the history of the Earth aren't two separate books. They're the same book. They are one single epic story, with the characters and the stage evolving together over these mind-boggling stretches of time.
When you put it all together, the new worldview was just breathtaking. Suddenly, all life was connected. We all share common ancestors if you go back far enough. We could see this beautiful process of gradual change playing out over billions of years on an ancient, dynamic planet. We weren't special creations placed on the Earth. We were part of it, just one branch on this huge, ever-growing tree of life.
And that kind of leaves us with one last really fascinating thought to chew on. Evolution isn't over. It's not some story that happened millions of years ago and then just stopped. Natural selection is happening right now, all around us. Which really makes you wonder, doesn't it? As our world keeps changing, what traits is nature selecting for today? And what does that mean for the future of life?